Okay, we are ready for our second video. So here we are. We are in the EQ web configurator, which we downloaded and began setting up, and that all is shown in part one of this series. So we have, as a reminder, we've gone in, we've made some decisions, right? So just we left the logo alone. We loaded our config.xml file so that we can save changes. So we changed the project name. We're going to use Firebase to save our data. We're not going to have a second QSort, but I am still excited about that option. We don't have images, but that also is very exciting that that is now an option. Randomized presentation order of our statements. We chose that because they're actually grouped in an order. I can show you briefly what I mean by that. So here is the original. This is where I started. These were statements used in a different study, right? And I changed some of the categories. Here we are with that again, some more reduction, but we have categories and they're grouped. So the first seven statements are enjoyment, for instance, and the next seven are enthusiasm. So I don't want um, my participants to get a hint about that kind of thing. And that's why we have it randomized. I don't change anything about the colors or the logo again, right? I am running this as an anonymous um, data collection. I'm going to add a consent page, which has already been approved by my IRB. Um, and, right, I'm leaving all of the pre-sort options the same, right? I haven't changed any of those things from the defaults. I've also made it so that participants can you do unforced sorts. In other words, there'll still be a grid, but they can deviate from that grid if they really want to. I am going to have them comment on the most salient statements. So in this case, from +4 and -4 columns, but not the second most, right? So not the +3 and -3. I haven't done that. That hasn't been an option before, but I never did that when I did in-person sorting. So I've decided to bypass that. And I'm going to have a survey, right? And so this is where we left off, that I can create some survey options. Oops, I think I just messed that up. And that's okay. So, right, so these are, we're going to delete some of these. These are the default ones, right? So it is important that all the ones with an asterisk are required, right? So I'm just going to delete these. These are all important for what Sean Banisic does. Right, here's the one I accidentally included, right? So now I can come up here and say, oh, well, you know what I want to do? Let's look at my questions, which I've put in here. So these are basically the default, right? Most like, most unlike. And I'm not worried about those right now. So those aren't, right, questions. Those are already taken care of within the software. All right, I don't even know where I pasted these things. But, right, I want to know what discipline or disciplines you teach within your institution. So I'm going to copy this, right? So this is a text kind of answer or question. So I have text, right? I want them to ask it. let's see. So this label is just going to be called discipline. This is just basically when I save the data in an Excel file, this will be the name of the column. Um, I'm not going to limit the answer length. Right. I'm not going to restrict it to numbers. So, and here's the question note. So this should be just what it asks. And I don't know what placeholder means exactly, but that's okay. Right, so now I can add this item so that if I scroll down, right, I will see now my question. So I have some other questions. By the way, you notice that I like to leave a lot of my questions open as text, um, just because it makes it that much easier for me later on. Oops, here. I'm just going to make this so I can keep track of what I've actually taken care of. All right, so then I want to know what your role is. Again, for whatever reason, in part because before Sean made, so this is role, right? My question. I guess that should be a question mark. I'm not going to limit the length. I'm not going to restrict it to numbers because I'm not asking them to input, right, a response, say, to a multiple choice question, right? That's everything I have there, so I'll add that. And then I like to scroll down just to make sure that my question has been added. There it is, right? Go back here, right? So I'm gonna here's my how long have you taught at this institution? Just trying to get a feel for right what they're how long they've taught. I just made it for this specific institution. You know, I could probably change that, but it's already so I'm going to put years, right? My question, and I'm going to add answer in years. So here, I'm I'm still not going to limit the answer, and I'm not going to restrict it to numbers, only because sometimes people like to expand on responding to these kind of questions, even though, right, if I answered, I might say 31, right? But instead, I like to make responses a little more open because sometimes participants want to add additional information that might be helpful to me. Now, here we have described your preferred teaching, right? Practices. This is specific to my study. It's not really a demographic question. Oh, I forgot, did I? No, I didn't add my item. This is why we make sure that it's added, and I like to scroll down just to make sure. So there's my role. There's my years. All right, so now, right, this is, I might just call it style for teaching style. Oh, maybe I'll call it practice. Right. I am, oh, I can't remember if I changed the other one to required or not. Right. I'm not going to limit the length. I'm not going to restrict it to just numbers. Again, I like it if I can allow participants to add some more information, maybe expound, maybe there's something specific that's important that they would like to add about what they do, so I like to give them that opportunity. And then anything else they like to add. This is always helpful for me when it comes to things like the Q sword itself, if they have something to say. Again, I like to offer kind of an open opportunity for people to provide information if they so desire. So I could say, right, so maybe I'll just call it comment. Right? I'm not going to limit the length. I'm not going to actually make it required because sometimes people don't have anything to add. And so then they just put nothing. And I would just rather, right, allow them to add it if they want to. Now I can scroll down and see if everything is here, right? It tells me if it's required or not. So I accidentally didn't require the years, right? um, I don't think that's a big deal. I could delete it and add it, right? And I can shift these around, right? So that they appear in a different order. So let's say that, oh no, the years is so important. Right? So I'm going to delete that and I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to, right, call this years, and this time I'm going to make it required. And I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet. And how long have you taught at this institution? I'm going to copy that again, come up here, put in my little note. Right? Not going to limit the length. Not going to restrict them to numbers, right? And I'll ask them to put it in years. All right, this time I like how that turned out. But now it's the last question. I didn't really want it to be the last question. So great news. I can just take this, right, and move it to where I want it, right? So there I have the order I want, right? This is just information. There's not a response here, so it just lets them know if there's an asterisk next to the question that it's required. Everything's looking good, and now I am ready. Right now I have to save these changes to my config file. Right, so that's in here in settings. Right, and I just hit save. Do I want to write over it? Yes, I do. And that's been accomplished. Now we literally just go through here step by step. Right? So here's an important thing to note, that statements can include HTML, right? Which is really nice, but it means that if that's not your plan, you need to make sure that none of these kinds of things, including backslashes, right, appear in your concourse. Here's my final set. So here's my final set, right? LGBTQ plus could cause me an issue, but I'm hoping not, but we'll find out eventually. Right? Nothing else seems to have any other, right, backslashes or anything like that. So it looks like we're okay. So now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to have to load my statements file. And now I'm going to scroll down, and all I have to do is paste my statements. So I'm going to get rid of these statements, and now I'm going to paste my statements. But notice that they're in an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to do something is basically what I like to call working smarter and not harder. Right? So I'm going to copy all of these, right? So Control C. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open Notepad. And I use Notepad quite a lot, so I'm surprised almost that it hasn't appeared. So there's my Notepad's going to open. Oh, I use Notepad a lot for some of my classes where, for instance, in Excel, I give them, right, maybe a text file. So I'm going to paste all of my statements, right? Notice that I have one statement per line, right? And that I have an enter after, right? The same issue I have for my programming. So now I'm going to save as, right? And that's not the name of it. And this is this is for software applications final I just gave, right? So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to put this into my articles folder as soon as I remember what the heck I called the folder for this study. Lots of studies, so many. It's not emotions. Just making sure. So, sometimes I have to scroll through to figure out what in the world I called something. So many studies. Keep going. It should appear eventually. It's always would be good if I could remember what I name things, but I don't. No. Oh. Sorry, it's taking longer than I anticipated. Now that's the end of it. So I must have missed it. So silly. Not all of these are published, in case you were wondering. Oh, it might be under instructor. I think I actually have the file folder open. There it is. And so it ends up that this is really important, right? So this is my statements, and I'm going to need this when I'm ready to do my analysis with Cade. So I'm making it right now, right? So emotion statements. Right? I'm going to save it here. But for right now, I'm just going to, right? This eliminates any question that all of my statements are in fact text. So now I can come in here, paste my text. Now we don't have an enter. And now I'm going to save these to my file called statements. And we say yes, it lets us know that we are all set as far as that's concerned. So now we're ready to go to the map, right? So it recognizes that there are 42 statements loaded. That's good because that's what I have, right? And now I'm going to load my map. And all I'm doing here is figuring out, right, what my distribution is like. Oh, it kind of, oh, that might be just theirs. So I'm going to come in and I, again, settle all of these things in my spreadsheet so that I have everything that I need, right? I started off doing this just to organize and cut up my statements and then create my grid for doing paper in-person sorts. And now I've just kept this because it's a great way to organize, at least for me. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. So, and we start with -4 to +4. So I'm going to come in here, right? So I've already forgotten 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So come in here, right? So I got 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6, right? And then this is 6, right? And 2 is 5. Just got to make sure 5. And then 4. Oops. And then 3. And notice that it shows you whether or not your pattern has used up all your statements. Yay, we like things that are, you know, kind of idiot proof. So that looks good. It looks just like how I set up my grid, right? Right, so I'm just going to leave everything exactly as I had it, or as it's set up as default, and now I'm going to, right, save my map file. And we say yes. Next up is our language. So here we have some options, right? So we can use defaults. There's some fancy things we can do, right? I am personally rather boring. So I'm going to load my language. And here's my consent page, which I said I was going to have, right? Notice that it has some HTML in it. Mine is just going to be text. So hopefully that works out okay. I'm going to have to find my, oh, I think I have it. I always have many things open. It's fine. So here is, it's in my instrument, but it's also in my recruitment. So here is my approved consent. It will go out in both email to recruit. They'll get the consent that way, and then the consent form will also be and I noticed that the link to the online sort's not in here, so I'm, oh, well, I can't provide that yet because, right, I don't have it because I haven't gotten that far. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to paste, right, my message. I may have to tweak that because I didn't include any HTML like, right, bold or line returns. And here, right, I have contact information that is actually in here. I'm just going to copy it and paste it in here, right? We have an accept button, so yay. Here, these are all things that are, I'll call it kind of defaulted, right? So here we can just go in. There's my landing page, right? This is, it's called Faculty Emotions. And, right, this is the welcome. So I am just going to probably just steal again from my recruitment because I am very boring. Maybe I'll just copy this part, making decisions on the fly. Add thank you for your time and effort. And maybe I'll just make this research study. Please click the continue button, right? So that's just part of the instructions. There's a start button. Right? Right, so we're just customizing some of the things from Sean's study. All right. Oh, we're not using a sign in, but let's go down because I've already chosen some of those things. So here is my sorting. So if we come over here and we look at this, right, I have most like me and most unlike me instead of agree and disagree. So I'm just going to go in and make sure, right, that this says like me. Right, no strong feelings, right? And this is unlike me. Oops. Maybe I can change this to neutral, or I can say no strong feelings, right? This is just instructions for the pre-sort. Um, I always have them do a pre-sort. I recently had a question about skipping this stage. This is a very important stage because it allows our participants to kind of chunk doing the sort. And again, just more instructions. Here we go again, right, with instead of disagree, I have most unlike me. And here's my condition of instruction, right? I might have to scroll up to see that, right? So consider your classroom teaching and sort the following based on what is like you to unlike you. We are interested only in your views. There are no right or wrong responses. Sometimes that's important. Right here, this is most like me. I'm going to scroll up and make sure that in my pre-sort, and so, right, we're going to split them up into 3 piles. So a pile for statements. You feel are unlike you. A pile for cards. You feel are like you. And a pile for the rest. Here is a link to the example, right? So we're going to come up in here. So here's my pre-sort instructions, right? So I'm just going to add in here, think about your teaching, classroom teaching. And again, I can come in here, right? And I can make changes. That's why we can run it locally. So most like me. There's my post-sort agreement. So on like me, right? Unlike me. They can do some various things. And then here are my post sort questions. Right, so just some more instructions because this is the language part. And it looks like I have done everything I need to here. So now I'm going to save this. Right, and the next step is the database and how we're going to set that up. But for right now, let's go back here to the very beginning. And we're going to make sure that we don't have any weird problems. So we've already navigated to our folder. And now we're going to copy to our clipboard. We're just going to do a quick little test to see if this is working. So there's our consent. Wow, it's really small, right? So I might need to do some things to make that larger, right? It makes me agree first. Here is a redux of, right, our study, and, right, read the following, and then, right, this just gives us more information, right? So I enjoy, right? So now I can just drag and drop. Can also hit keys. Right? So, and that's going to continue until I've done all of these. So my text size seems okay. Again, I might want to go and change something about the size of my font. So I might have to do some HTMLing, and resave that language part of what I did here. So language, right? So we have our consent. So we can try to see if just making it, oh, nope, can't do that, right? So if I want to make it larger, perhaps I might have to come up here and borrow some things. So, right, if I want to change my font size, I can do something like this. So this is at the beginning. Sean does make things so much easier for us. Right, so I can just paste this here. And then the div at the end. It just lets us know where that ended. Yes, I did once take a course on HTML. It was a million years ago. All right. And so now I'm just going to, or I didn't change anything else. So I'm just going to go in here and, right, I'm going to save my language again. I'm going to say yes, right, say okay. And now I'm going to come back up here, right, I'm going to clear this, and I'm just going to start again to see if that fixed my issue. So really, very nice that we can look at things locally first to make any changes before we upload our files into Firebase. Or sorry, Netlify. All right, so I'm going to come up here again. I'm going to put in my host. All right, so that's definitely bigger. Maybe I want to have it slightly bigger. I could also insert returns in here. So you notice that it doesn't do that automatically, even though my text itself looks that way. But I can, again, go in, right, and tweak this some more, right? So I can come up to my language, right, and we have these nice little shortcuts, right? So bold, italics, right, underline. If I want a page break, this is all I need. So I can do, right, So I can come in here and, right, after this I could have a page break. And then after this I could have a page break and a page break and a page break and page break so that it looks a little more like this. Maybe I want to have 2 page breaks after that. Get all fancy. And maybe I want my text a little bigger. So here's my font size. I'm going to make it 28. So bigger than it was. And we'll see how that looks. So again, we're going to scroll down. We're going to save our new settings. We're going to go up here and scroll down. I like to make sure that I come up here, right? I'm going to try this again and see how it looks. Oh, wow, look at that. That's really nice, right? So really easy to read. I got my page breaks in there, right? I have 2 page breaks after this one, right? And I can do the same thing here. I can make my description larger, right? By, again, just doing the exact same things I did before, right? So, all right, here's my, so I can literally just steal it from here, right? I must not have added that. So, here is, so I'm going to come in here. So my font size is going to be the same, right? And I'm going to BR backslash. I'm really bad about the backslashes because I can never, I do the same thing when I'm doing C programming. I don't know why it doesn't. So, yep, it's backslash the other way. So that I have my carriage return, right? And then I need something at the end technically, right? And so I can just, again, just scroll up and borrow, as I tell my students, copy and paste. It's God's gift to us. I say that because when I originally learned to program, it was with cards, and it was horrible. And you know, you waited for the computer center to give you your printout and the errors, and then you sat there just tormenting yourself looking over the output trying to figure out what was wrong and why it didn't work. It's great. I still have cards somewhere. All right, so now I'm going to do this again. Again, it makes so much sense to test drive everything, right, before, so that looks nicer, it's bigger, right? And now I'm ready to start. So I like how that looks. So this is a good place to end for right now, and then we will address the next stages of our setup.